Hello and welcome to another edition of Mailbag. What is Mailbag? Well, Mailbag is a feature of the channel where you guys leave lots of comments on the channel and I attempt to answer those comments, or if I can't answer those comments, I throw it out to you guys who have more knowledge on some of this stuff than I do. So let's get into the first mailbag of this session. Remember, like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Go over to Instagram and follow me there. Go over to Facebook, follow me there. That's where the normal notices are. And consider becoming a Patreon. Next one comes from Yossa70 in response to, can you use an iPad with an MX-1? Video I did in January 2022. Now, Yossa writes, I know this is an older video, but one way round is to use a separate audio interface plugged into the iPad. You then have as many outs as the interface has and probably a MIDI connection as well. Just plug into the outs into the MX-1, sync over MIDI, and you're all done. Now, I think, it's very interesting this comes around again because, lots of musicians are using phones and iPads now as their source for doing this sort of stuff. And a number of new and redesigned audio interfaces have really come into the market now, and that has put more support into the iPad and iPhone market. I'm thinking of things like, and there are a number of them, so I'm just picking on one. I mean, I've got the Roland Go Mixer, and I use that with my iPad quite often when I'm away from bass, because it's so simple. It really is. You don't need to carry a lot with you to make the Go Mixer work. And there are a number of other audio interfaces, some more expensive ones, some more complex ones, but things like the Roland, if you're just a couple of musicians and you want to record your composition, sit in your friend's bedroom or something like that, the Go Mixer is such an easy interface, and the software that you can now get on the iPad and the iPhone allows you to do a lot of this stuff as well. Simplified DAW functions, getting up to some quite complex DAW functions I've seen some people do. So I think where we're going with this is the iOS market for these devices has really sort of, since that video was recorded, have really expanded quite exponentially, and you can do a hell of a lot with an iPad and an iPhone. Will you get the same quality? Yes, to a degree. Will you get the same functionality? Probably not. There are things that there are limitations to those platforms, but for somebody on the move, they make a very, very good alternative. Next comment or question comes from Jack and Jill Marley 1988, aka Richard, and this was in response to I'm underwhelmed by the Roland D-50, a video I did in December 2021. And Richard writes, as I wasn't too bothered about editing sounds and just wanted LA Synthesis module as a preset machine, that's part of the reason why I bought the Roland CM32s, and also slightly more lo-fi sound of the CM32 appealed to me, as it was basically an MT32 in a beige box with no display or controls other than a power button and a volume control and two LEDs, but these only have up to 128 sounds. I can use the numeric keypad on my Evolution Mark 149 MIDI controller to change the sounds, plus many sequences also allow you to alter basic stuff like panning and reverb. Sounds that mostly appeal to me on these Rocklers are the LA Synth units, is a sound like Agopo and Vibra slap sounds in the drums, and I also like the fact the MT32 CL32L drums are extremely lo-fi and based on very short samples, which in general nature of LA synthesis but I also prefer the MT32, CM32 drums. Did I write that down? No. No, I also prefer the patches. And as you mentioned, LA synthesis is very basic with very limited editing capability, although patch editing is far more comprehensive on the D50. I do also have some CM32L samples in my CM map on my Roland SC88 Pro, which sounds fairly close, but the PCM type sounds and the drums are based on the SC55 samples, which is also the case for the OG SC55. I can sort of understand with Roland the D10, the D110 and the D20 are overlooked, although that's not to say they are not good machines, but maybe not for everyone. On the contrary, the D10 and D110 and D20 do have slightly better drums, and I think that one of the R8's rim shots is based on the rim shot used in the drum section on those three synths. I have listened to those synths on many recordings, so they weren't that bad for musicians on a tight budget. That was a fairly chunky piece, and you've got to get your head around it. But I'm always really up for people's views on different pieces of kit. They might not share the same views as me, but I'm always interested in what other people think about certain pieces. And one of the things you learn about Roland is that they were absolutely notorious during this period of time for reusing the same samples for the bass tones on various instruments that were issued during this period of time. If you go and look at the S50 sample libraries that were issued by Roland, if you go and look at the U110 sample libraries that were issued by Roland, if you go and look at the D cards that were issued by Roland, you will find a lot of tones are cross-compatible or sound very similar. And the reason why they sound very similar is because they basically are very, very similar. They may be called different things on different machines, but effectively it's the same sample set that was used time and time again to give you something slightly different. So, the D-series synthesizers, the human natural drum machines, both used this type of synthesis. And many times I've said on the channel, one of the things is, if you think about this, the D-50 was the flagship. It's the one that you see on top of the pops and other music shows of the time and the artists on stage. The D-50 was the better synthesizer, but it wasn't the better workstation, the D20, because the D20 gave you the sequencer, wasn't on the D50. D20 gave you the ability to back your sounds up to floppy disk, wasn't available on the D50. D50 was far more programmable. I mean, you had numerous more presets or parameters you could program on the D50 over what you could do on the D20. But if you wanted a far more rounded machine, the D20 was the better workstation.